Today on the Coach of Our podcast, we have a very special guest joining the show today. Since arriving at this school in 2004, Coach has revitalized the Augies, turned the men's soccer team into an annual playoff contender. He's now the winningest coach in school history and has guided the Augies to 3 NCAA Division III national tournament appearances, including the Sweet 16 in 2008 and an MIAC playoff championship in 2010, which was only 2 of his 7 MIAC playoff appearances. He's coached many athletes, including 77 all MIAC MIAC conference players, 31 all-region, 24 scholar all-region athletes, including 4 all-Americans, 2 MIAC players of the year, and 5 scholar all-Americans. And he's really this is a great episode here, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So please stay tuned to the end, where you get all those great coaching questions and some of the things, and I hope you guys enjoy this one. Coach's overall record at the school is 194, 134, and 53 with the 579 winning percentage. So Coach has done a really good job here. But with that being said, let's welcome Coach Greg Holker to the Coach of Why podcast.
With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coach's Why podcast.
That's a great question.
That was my Coach's Why.
Well, welcome back to another Coach's Why podcast, guys. We have a very special guest in the on today's episode and in the building. And if you guys listened to the last episode, I told you guys the update, and so I am now in my official office now. It's no longer the the house with the nice stuff behind me, but officially in the office today, and we have Coach Greg Holker from Augsburg University joining the show today. He's the head soccer coach, a men's soccer coach, I should say, up there at that school. So, Coach, thank you for joining me today. Coach, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm happy to be here. First, I thought maybe you were doing like a Nike shoe business on the side, looking at the top shelf back there, but now it makes a little bit of sense. First day.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, we let's just say we over order sometimes, and so there's been some over orders. So those are, for somebody rips their shoe, or like me on my first day, I forgot my shoes back at home. So luckily we had a few pairs there, so, but that's maybe not a bad business idea. Maybe I'll get into the side hustle of shoes selling one of these days. You never know. But Coach, I appreciate you joining in again. I know there's been a little bit of a delay on our part with, I guess my time actually. Last time my computer was broken. Now we're back together. So I appreciate you wanting to still be on the show today. And just like every other episode, I always pass it along to you and kind of let you take it away. Tell us, myself and everybody listening, a little bit about yourself, kind of where you grew up, when you got involved in all sports, but, maybe in particular the sport of soccer or football, if we're talking, since that's obviously what we're coaching.
I'll try to keep it short so the listeners aren't bored, but I grew up in the Twin Cities here, Minneapolis, St. Paul area, the south suburb. Moved here when I was 3 from Southern California and been here ever since. So pretty close to home, haven't strayed too far away. I played soccer in the youth spaces here in the Twin Cities. The ODP system back when it was relevant, and then into college, where I attended Gustavus, like an hour and a half southwest of the city. So played at Gustavus for 4 years, played a little bit after that in the PDL for the Twin Cities Tornado. Other than that was coaching. I started coaching at a young age. So I was 16 when I first started coaching, and I had my youngest sister was 5 years younger. So I was like an assistant coach on her, U12 team for 2 years. And then from there, took off. So I think maybe at like 18 or 19, I was coaching like U17 teams and things that maybe in today's world wouldn't be the most appropriate space to do things. But back then that was a little bit more acceptable. So got into it while I was playing in college and stayed with it. And then when I finished my undergraduate work at Gustavus, I did graduate work at Minnesota State University Mankato in sports administration. As a grad assistant at Gustavus in their sports information office. So it was really kind of a pathway for me to be able to stay involved in coaching at Gustavus at the same time. So I was assisting with the men's program as well for 2 years, 2000, 2001. And then I moved up back to the city where I was 1 year assistant at Bloomington Jefferson, a local high school. And then I became the head coach at the Academy of Holy Angels in 2003. And then after that, I was there for like 3-4 months, had a great year, and then went on to Augsburg when that opportunity opened. So 2004 became the men's coach at Augsburg University for $7,000 a year, and here we are. This is season 22 coming in this fall. So it's been a long run, at least in the scholastic side of the game, and certainly I'm still involved in the youth space and in coach education and some other club leadership positions too. So a little bit more broad than most that are just in the scholastic space.
Right. So you've been doing this for, like you said, 20, 21 years at this point, right? For at least at Augsburg. And so what's the, maybe what's been some of the biggest changes, maybe on the coaching side, but also on the game side, right? Whether it's schematics or just the game itself, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in your time frame from when you first got into the game, or maybe at this level, I should say, to now?
Yeah, I think two things distinctly stand out, and that is the human element, the human changes. Like people are
Right.
different now than they were 22 years ago. Certainly, we've experienced some things as a society that have shifted some. They've been challenging, right? You have COVID, you have George Floyd, you have all sorts of things here in our community, at least specifically, that were pretty significant, impactful things for us. But 21 years ago, it was more of a command and direct style of coaching where you're kind of yelling and bossing and bullying a little bit. And now it's more about, guided questions and collaboration with the players and making sure that they understand that they're cared for and loved first. I think that's the most important thing. And 20 years ago, that was not the case. It was just, let's just get it.
Drill sergeant style, yeah.
Totally. And then I think too, the quality of player has evolved significantly just because of access to games on TV, to seeing games, to having a more robust coaching experience throughout their youth time. There's more clubs, there's better coaches, there's more informed people today. I still think we have a million miles to go in our coaching in the youth game, but I think generally people have more exposure, and so that they're significantly better further along. I mean, soccer IQs are higher, technical quality, pace of action, decision making is all a little bit better than it used to be. That being said, I also think they've lost a little bit of the fervor for compete and fight and grit and grind and the fight through adversity. And maybe that is a combination with the evolution of the human change too, like that snowplow parenting cycle that we had is, there's a byproduct of that, and it's teaching kids how to be resilient now and bounce back when things don't go their way. That's been a challenge for sure. So those are the two biggest things, I think, the human element and then access to the game, so players are better.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know you're obviously mentioning like the technique and some of the, like you said, the ability to just watch. It helps out with the being better maybe earlier in the time frame. But you talk about the whole maybe loss for the want. So like I guess for in my terms, like it's when I was playing, probably same for you, or maybe back in those days, like the athletes had the switch that you didn't have to try to flip for them as a coach, right? Now, like they just don't have that. So like you've been in the game for a long time. You've been just coaching in general for a long time. What do you think is the main reason behind that? And why do you think that it's something that you see changing in the future, or do you think it's still going to be something that kind of continues down that road? Like, will there ever be a time where it's like just like a group of kids, whether it's just like a generation of kids, or maybe just like there becomes a point where it just kind of slowly starts going back to that type of, maybe not necessarily the same coaching styles that were there, but maybe like on the athletic side of things, like a group of kids just automatically have that switch built into them?
I think until we have a shift in society's just perspective, I think that's not going to take place. I do think we need a struggle generally, and I think if you look at the landscape today, certainly politically and in the country and in the different conflicts that we're involved in right now, there's potential that comes to fruition. And I hope that it doesn't, but a difficult time is probably what's required to shape the way that these young people rise up today. So it's been pretty easy. It's been pretty comfortable. We've lived in an amazing place where we have what we need, and the struggle is, at least in higher education, right? The struggle isn't felt like it is in some of the smaller communities, more impoverished spaces. So I think unless you really have that, it's hard to just talk about or change it.
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
my
Yeah.
parents experienced, Vietnam and, some of the, economic issues around the early 80s. And those things are all, they're gone.
They're
So,
different. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
great.
think, like you said,
I think you can still find pockets of kids. Like if you grow up in a neighborhood and you got a bunch of buddies and it just happens to be that we're all the same age, we're all out every day training and playing and getting into trouble and, throwing balloons at cars or doing whatever it is they do.
yeah,
You could get a small group to do it, but I don't think a societal movement is in our future unless something
sure.
something scary happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that like you said, that you'll find kids who have that motivation built to them. It's just you don't have the pool of kids that you used to have to be able to choose from to have that built into them, which um like you said, it's just something that we've grown to. So, coaching, we have to evolve, and you've obviously evolved from when you first jumped in, and even probably whenever you were coaching that 17U soccer to your first college gig, right? Like obviously you had to evolve just in that space on how you handle things, I'm sure. So yeah, it's a game of evolving. So I appreciate you diving into that a little bit. But you said that you got to play in college, right? And you said that you got to play and experience that. So what was your recruiting process like? I mean, what was some of the things that stood out to you about it? What was your experience like in general? I mean, and then also speak about some of the schools that came down and try to get you, and what made you choose the school that you went to.
A good question. I mean, it's been a minute. I finished, I went to 1996 was my first year at Gustavus.
Got to think, man. Yeah, bring back. Hey, I'm sure it was a good time in your life. So I mean,
Yeah,
I know you may not think about it a lot, but I know there's some good memories from that time. I'm
yeah.
sure.
There's some memories that are popping back in too. Some I won't share. It was the final two for me were Gustavus and St. Olaf College in Northfield, and then I think as I grew outside of that, it was University of Wisconsin Oshkosh.
Mm,
And then it was, I visited St. Ambrose, which was an NAIA institution in Iowa. I just kind of not really knowing what the landscape looked like, the Viterbo's of the world, wherever they were sprinkling a little bit of cash your way, it was like, oh, let's go check that out.
yeah.
Um, you know, I I had interest in Marquette at one point, but I don't think I was probably, good enough athletically maybe for that. So it ended up being for the most part down to those three. And then once Oshkosh was kind of out, it was Gustavus and St. Olaf. And really the decision for me was, I think just like both were St. Olaf's coach at the time, Kurt Anderson, just an incredible, wonderful man who did so many great things for that institution and still is a good friend of mine today as we became colleagues later on in life. He was very, he didn't lay off. He was
Mm,
calling all the time. He was on the gas always. And Larry Zelenz, who was at Gustavus at the time, was a little bit more in the background. He kind of, if he was watching a game, he'd be up in the top corner wearing a fishing hat, like you didn't know he
okay.
was
Yeah.
Gustavus's coach. He was kind of the sneaky little guy. But what he wrote me when he wrote me impacted me.
Mm,
So it wasn't as frequent, but it was more powerful, and I think it was more specific, and it spoke to me a little bit more than the method that Kurt was using at St. Olaf at that time. So that's what drew to me Gustavus, and yeah, I mean it was. I had a great experience there. I was unfortunately like the only player in my class, so I started and played right away as a
mm,
freshman and all the way through until I think maybe Rob Pottle was a goalkeeper, split some games throughout the course of his career, and then Mike Orr transferred in, but he stayed on because he ended up being a year behind me. So there was really nobody in my class. That was the only thing I, wish would have been different. That I would have had teammates of my
right.
age. The better players were 2 years older than me, and then they were a year younger than me.
Yeah. So you really had to kind of, yeah, you didn't really have somebody you can mature with or grow with that you felt, like came with that freshman class. I'm sure, I think that's an important piece, right? Is having a good class with you that you can go through all the freshman struggles, quote unquote, right? Or freshman, oh, maybe struggles, maybe that's the right term, but just the
The
things that
journey.
you go through. Yeah, the journey of a freshman, right? From a freshman year to a junior, senior, 5 year senior, right? Back then you didn't have 6, 7 year seniors like you do now, but just that journey. And so yeah, I can see how important that was to you, and whenever you think back to those times and you think back to just the time you spent there, I know you started coaching before you got to college, but was the experience that you had with your collegiate coach, was that something that kind of tipped you over the edge and said, I want to actually do this after my time frame here? Or was it already kind of instilled in you from just coaching your little sister that that's what you wanted to do?
I kind of think both. I think I was, lined up just the way I operate is to serve other people, help other people, and be involved in active things like sport and leadership. Those are always things that were important to me. But Larry was the one who, gave me the idea that I could actually do it.
Okay.
I think that there's a different deal, and learning from Larry was helpful because he was such an organized coach. I mean, he had just everything was organized. I mean, the planning was very intricate, very good. And then there were some things that maybe I didn't love about Larry. And, in my playing time, he just wasn't as personable or approachable as
Yeah.
maybe I was seeking out at that time. So, that's okay too. And I learned from that. So that became, as I move forward, something that I wanted to tweak a little bit and become
Right.
more that person that maybe I didn't have in that space, but also celebrate the really great things that Larry did uh, and and keep those values too and learn from them. So, we all learn from each other and try to grow a little bit. And there's been plenty of players who played for me that are now coaches, and they've taken things that they enjoy and they've thrown away things they didn't like at all. So that's
Yeah.
okay. That is part of
Yeah.
everyone finding themselves.
Yeah. So how does it feel to know that you have some of your kids that you got to coach, right? And they wanted to be a coach as well. So you kind of have like a coaching tree essentially, right? So like I know I it's interesting, but the coach that was really my mentor, not only for when I was in high school, but I got to coach with him, at some point in my high school career, and I'm now the first coach of his. Maybe I might even be the first athlete of his, but I know I'm the first coach of his to coach at the college level. And so like I've talked to him about it. He's like, yeah, it's really cool. Like it makes me happy. And there was a time where we were at a tournament and he had at least 5 previous athletes of his that we were all kind of in the same generation and time frame within 2 to 5 years of each other, all in the same event. They were at different schools, different parts of the state, but we were all back together. And he was like, he loved it. Like I asked him about it and he was super happy. So like how does that make you feel whenever you have previous athletes or maybe even assistant coaches, right, if you've ever had that, take that leap and go to the call or to just coaching in general?
It's the most rewarding thing for me. I mean, it really is a reflection of the good work I think that we do as an organization or as a program. I mean, I have over 130 former players who are now coaching,
Oh wow.
from MLS franchises and college programs and high school programs and youth programs across the country, and some pretty significant names on that list. And I don't know how much digging you did, but Andy Seidel has been at FC Cincinnati for a bit, and
Long time.
Evan Foos was with Columbus Crew before, now taking over Club Ohio, and Tyler Heaps is the sporting director at San Diego FC and MLS. I mean, he oversees the entire operation. So it's really interesting to stay connected to these guys and hear the stories and hear how they manage, their programs, their organizations, their businesses, and now we have some really prominent and healthy coaching people here in the Twin Cities too, like James C's a name I'll drop. I mean, he's won 2 state championships. He was a national coach of the year. He just was recognized by our athletic department in this upcoming fall's Hall of Fame ceremony. So there's so many. That's what makes me most proud, a lot more than the wins, because it's knowing that some sort of impact that I've had or our program has had resonated with them, and they're
Yeah.
sharing the best qualities that they took from it with other people. And I think that I know that these are good humans who think about serving other people first. I know that they are prepared, and because they've worked very, very hard to get to where
Yeah,
they're,
for sure.
just getting through our program is hard enough. And I know that they're lifelong learners. They're always trying to advance themselves and grow and learn and make a difference in the world. So it's super rewarding. It's the
Yeah.
best part.
That's amazing. Yeah. Uh, People that you hope to be good people after give back. I'm sure that's an amazing feeling, and hopefully one day I'll get there too. But I love that you get to experience that. And so, speaking of, obviously all of the things that you've mentioned, at least up to this point, what are some of the biggest challenges that you feel like you faced from, I know you said some of them were like the evolving of just the people, right? But is there anything that you feel like you've had to overcome as a coach that, like this was a challenge in 2004 or 2008 or 2010 or whatever the time was, to where you had to figure out a way to overcome that, and obviously eventually you found your space, or you found the ways to smooth those things out, I guess is the best way to put it. So maybe some just challenges that you faced over your time frame and how you had to overcome them as a coach.
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind most distinctly was probably the 2017 to 2018 window. Those two teams, I got maybe a little bit complacent, and I gave the leadership keys to the wrong people,
Hmm.
and I was a bit naive to what was really happening in our program. And then as I became more aware of it, I understood that ultimately, like, we're responsible for everything, right? Like,
Right.
I think when I was younger, if somebody didn't get an idea or they didn't carry on a concept in the game, I'd be like, well, that player. And now it's more like, no, what could I have done differently to help
Mm-hmm.
check for learning and check for understanding so that player wouldn't have to go through that particular moment. So that 2017 team was disappointing because I think it had enough talent to do better, and it just made decisions away from the field that impacted its ability to perform. And so, the November 1st, I think it was the last day of the season, I removed 8 players from the team.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and we started training, like, this was back at the time where you could train all the way through the NCAA championship window. We would go at 6 a.m., just every day. And it was
Yeah.
everything. And it was a grind. And it wasn't having much to do with soccer. It had much more to do with, like, can you suffer? Can you embrace the struggle? And are you willing to give this for the group? And, through that process, we found that, some players were like, they want to be fired for sure. It was, this guy's brutal. He's ruthless. This is wrong. All
Yeah.
these horrible things. But on the backside of that, they made it through. And even though we lost some significant players of quality, the group itself came through much, much stronger. And we ended up, losing in penalties in the final of the MIC championship and getting into the NCAA tournament. So it was fun to see the players rewarded for,
Mm.
like, sticking with it and going to
Yeah.
it. And that repeated itself a little bit in the off season, I think maybe before last year, because we had, 9 or 10 guys that were all COVID eligible. So they were 5th-year guys. And
Yep.
I didn't have to go in the locker room because they had everything taken care of and buttoned up. And then they all leave at once. And we've got this young team that's leaderless, and that, the noses
Yeah.
are pointed in different directions and everyone has ideas. And, they saw, a Pep Guardiola rondo on Instagram for 20 seconds, and they think that that's how every training session should be, without
Right.
watching the other 1 hour and 40 minutes of suffering that the players went through. So it was a tricky time for us too in January, and it was a similar process, but the guys worked through it. And, we ended up finishing, I think, 3rd last year, was our highest finish in the conference since 2010-ish. So, now I think as we head into this next season, we're in a really good spot because these players understand that. But those probably were that I made the mistake of trusting the wrong people, and
Right.
that's my fault.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, right? Like, our, and I don't know, right? I know we didn't dive into like who it was, whether it was athletes or coaches or whoever it is in your chain of people around. But like at the same time, right? Like that's part of, and I might be naive to it, but the idea is like we need to give those leaderships, opportunities to the right people, right? And sometimes you don't know if it's the right people till they have the keys, right? Until they have that leadership. The delegation part of things, whether it's assistant coaches or help here, help there. If it's, I chose captains and they ended up being the wrong captains for what we were looking to do, right, based off of everything. Like, I think that's just, like you said, a piece of the puzzle that, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but you learned from it, right, at the end of the day. And that's ultimately, and hopefully they learned from it, whether the people involved did or the people underneath them who saw that happen to their teammates, like, oh, I don't want that to be part of me, and they stuck through it. Like, hopefully every person involved within that program at the time learned from it, right? And so that's ultimately, just as good as any other piece of it. Obviously, I know it's probably not great to look back at it and like, how did this even happen type of thing, but now, hopefully not only coach wise, but everybody else, they took that and were able to use it positively in their life.
I don't think, like as coaches, we're not any different than the players and the athletes that we serve. I mean, we're not a finished product. And this is, you take Kobe Bryant's reference back to, you know, being this great player, you're a failure. When he talked about failure, he's, missed a bunch of shots, and what is it? You're a failure? No, it's just Tuesday. Like, I come back tomorrow and I do the work. I go and get it, and I reflect on what happened, and I go take it and I move it forward. And his Snow White and Seven Dwarfs story, I think, was probably my favorite, where he's like, happy ending, right? At the end of the happy ending, they go off, and then 3 months later, they're having an argument, and he's sleeping on the couch. Well, nothing's final, right?
Yeah.
So we're always growing and learning. And I think that, those difficult moments that I've had throughout my career, and that was just, one, they help you. So there's nothing wrong with them. It's part of learning and part of growing. You have to struggle and you have to suffer, and then you have to figure out how you're going to solve it. And as long as you take proactive action, to ensure that that doesn't, or those specific circumstances don't occur again.
Right.
And you're more thoughtful about how you select people and what you do, and then you've made improvements and growth, and that's part of the process, and that's totally fine.
Absolutely. So, like, I've been in situations where I've had to, to keep kids from traveling because of their actions or because of what they've done, or not showing up, or whatever the case is, however little or however big it was. Like, those are hard times. To break it to a kid, and like it in your core value, like you don't want to, but you also know you have to do it, right? And there's other times where like they naturally just do what they like. Situation like that where you got to remove 8 kids, right? Whatever the case was, like, it's difficult. And so I guess whenever you think about your time frame collegiately, and all the times of you having to do that in your career, like for the new coaches out there who maybe haven't faced that yet, but will eventually have to, because I don't know, and maybe some coaches don't have to, maybe they're just lucky, and they might do it for 30 years and never have to kick anybody off, but there's a chance that if you really have a standard or something, right, there's going to be a time where you might have to do that. So I guess what I'm getting to is, like, how do you overcome those moments and overcome those things, which I guess you kind of broke down with, like, being proactive to know, like, we have to take steps so it doesn't happen again. But, like, I guess, how do you, like, what kind of advice, or maybe what kind of things should, like, a young coach who has never done that before, what should they do to either overcome it, or maybe set something prior to let either the coach have their moments where they may not have to do it because they've already established these things, or maybe to let the athletes know early, like, hey, if we do these things, you don't have to ever have to cross this hurdle if you follow these standards or whatever, right? Obviously the rules of whatever. So, like, maybe some advice for some young coaches, or maybe some things that they how to move on from it after they have to cross that bridge.
I try to just remind me, because I'm going to do there's 3 things I want to address. One is something that's on the wall in my office now, is it says a red flag early is a red flag late. Right? So I have that listed up there. That doesn't mean if there's a red flag early, that person isn't worth taking a risk on, or helping guide and mentor and mold and empathize with. I mean, if you think of the Ted Lasso series, Jamie Tart, right? Like, what a clown, right? But let's bring him in, the team to keep him play, and maybe the culture is strong enough to bring that person along with you. And it takes time. I think collaboration with players is really important, so that it isn't like you as a young coach directing, this is what our goals are going to be for the season, this is what I want to achieve. That's not relevant. Your job is to facilitate a space for the players to achieve what they intend or hope to achieve. And you're just accountability mirror. So, if my players say to me, hey, we want to win the MIAC championship this year, great. Everyone in our conference wants to win the MIAC championship. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? And what action steps are you going to take to give you the best opportunity to be able to do that?
Yeah.
All right. What are those things? We list them out. What are things that are going to get in the way or interrupt your ability to win this championship? What are distractions? We all have them. Every sport, every team has them. List those. And then we just kind of rifle it down to, like, 5, 6 things on each list, and we keep those things on the wall. Like, I know that if I do these things, that's kind of the Nick Saban above the line behavior over here. And over here is below the line, and this is going to hurt us. So as long as they can see that and they take part in it, then when things happen, because they are going to happen, you can just reference the things that they talked about and they brought up collectively. But that's the skill of a coach too, is to involve every single player, in that process, and not just have 5 or 6 voices dominate a room, because there are others who are there that may not have the same principles or same ambition. That's okay also. But as long as we collaborate and agree that there are different ways and things to do. The third thing, and I think this is probably the most important, because everybody makes this mistake. I've made it twice in my life, is coddling great players because we're scared of losing them.
Yeah.
So I had a kid, a youth player, this is probably 20 some years ago. And he let him get away with everything. Like, God, it's okay. You don't have to be there. You don't have to do this. You don't have to whatever. And at the end of the day, the guys on the team are like, Holks, what are you doing? Like, this guy's a jerk. And finally, when I squeezed him out, we just got better. We flourished without him. So he ended up, moving on, and we had a better environment, addition to subtraction. Another player who was also in this pool of this window of time, an exceptional talent. And he was a Division I player who came in, and I was like, we're going to lose him if I don't and I think that was what he had his entire life, every coach, because he was so good, no one wanted. So they just kind of let him get away with everything. Well, I'm not helping you if I'm not going to hold you accountable to things. I'm not. And for a year, I kind of floundered and struggled. And then in year 2, I'm like, you know what? I'd rather not have you than have a bad version of you.
Right. Absolutely.
And so here's what we're going to do. And if you can decide to be on board or off board, and it took him a little bit of time, but once he got on board, oh man. And so he became the conference player of the year. Right. And a significant leader and role model in our program, and somebody who comes back now today to speak to players and talk about look at this is important. And when Holker's being like this, he's doing it for a reason. And I can tell you from experience, there's a lot of value in what happens. So you can get it right. So red flag early is a red flag late. Collaborate with the group. Make sure that everybody is together on board. It's not just you dictating what the goals or ambitions are of the group, and make sure that they understand the steps that need to be taken and the obstacles that are in the way. And then don't coddle the great players.
Yeah. I think that's important, especially, all 3 of those are important. But that was one thing that I knew I had to do early on. And it's interesting because my first year being head coach, my 2 best athletes went back-to-back weeks of making mistakes on, actions that they did. And so, I can either let them get away with it, but if I know I let these 2 senior best the best wrestlers get away with it, my freshmen that I'm trying to develop are going to know that they could do not only now, but as a senior. So, I think that's important to kind of drill that right away, right? And to make sure that that's something that we don't do. So I love those 3. I wrote down, not gonna lie, I wrote down some of those because I think that's great. I think it's important, right? Like the checklist stuff is something I've done before, and I think that's really good because the days that they don't want to be there, or just the days that they're struggling, or they're not given their most focus or athletic, physical effort, you can point it out, like, hey, remember, this is what we talked about. You wrote it down today or this week or whatever it is. Whatever the case is, you have it as accountability holder, not only that you can point out, but they can look in the mirror and be like, well, you're right, I did say that. So type of thing. The red flag thing's cool.
It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. We can acknowledge that. And then I took something away from Cheryl Reeve, who's a Minnesota Lynx coach. And she said something at a women's symposium that I attended maybe 10 years ago. And she said, you get what you tolerate. And I was just taken aback by that. I'm like, man, you're right. And that was the same window of time that I was going through this press. So I was like, yes, you get what you tolerate. Like if I tolerate or I allow something, then that's what I'm going to get. And so whatever your standard is, keep it there.
Yeah. Keep your standard and keep it, and don't drop it down for your players. Help them, like you said, facilitate them to rise to yours, right? And so I love that for sure. I really do. So it sounds like you obviously you've been around it for a little while, and obviously some of these coaches you've seen, or like obviously just like you mentioned, Coach Reeves from the Lynx, over time, and just spent time around coaches, maybe some different things that you've been around, whatever the case is. But like, who was the most influential coach that you've been a part of or around? Maybe maybe just as an athlete too. Like, might have a coach from 7th grade that's so important to you still. or maybe a coach that was a mentor to you as you were coaching. Like who were they and why? And then a second parter for you off of that is, what is one thing that you've taken from them that you've implemented into your program or coaching style, whether it's on the like mental or social, right? The off the pitch stuff, and then or the other side of it is something you've implemented on the pitch that you think is important.
That's a tricky question for me because I have never really had, especially in my professional time frame or career, a mentor, somebody I call and lean into. I think my like growth and mentorship probably has been through mentoring others.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of younger coaches in our conference and even in the region, even colleagues and friends of mine that are my age or older, we have a lot of dialogue and we bounce ideas off each other. And I think in regard to like personal, informal education or development, professional development in that space, that's probably been the space. When we visit like which coaches or mentors had an impact on me personally, there's two names that come into mind, and they were at early phases of my life. One was a guy by the name of Andy Karagiorgio. At the time, he was Andy George, is a Greek guy. And I was a youth player, like, 10, 11 years old, and he was my coach at the time. And he coached with like a parent coach, right, was a part of it. And he was the one who had the soccer IQ. He was the first person to introduce me to the game, really. I'd never watched or seen a soccer game until he rolled out, one of those old school stands with the TV and VCR in his elementary class, middle school classroom. And it was like Channel 2, we're watching the Bundesliga, in like 1980 something. I don't know what it was. And I stayed connected with Andy for many, many, many years. I'm still connected with his wife. We lost him several years ago, and I now run a foundation that honors him and gives out scholarships to students in the community that he was a teacher and coach in. Just to thank him and his family for the great mentorship and friendship that they provided for me at an early, impressionable stage of my life. The other was my high school coach, Ted Seidel, who's a German guy. And he's not with us anymore either, but it was, I just think of how he assembled his staff and how close those men were together, and how as players, like, even if we thought Ted knew what he was doing or didn't know what he was doing, we knew an eighth of what he had already forgotten this week, like that's just the reality of it. But it was so cool to see how they interacted and worked together and cared so deeply about the kids that they were working with. And so for me, it's like, how can I honor him too? And that's by putting together, coaching staffs that have a real good connection. And I haven't always gotten it right. I mean, I've had a couple recent bumps along the way, but our current staff right now, the last 2 years has been just phenomenal. And I'm fortunate and thrilled, and maybe it's no coincidence that they all played for me. So, when you have that kind of familiarity with the values and with the expectations of the program and the people who care about it as much as maybe even more now than I do, it really makes a difference. So that was, that's what I learned from Ted and Andy, and those were young, impressionable years. And I think, today, now it's just, I'm so fortunate to be able to have conversations with younger coaches or newer, less experienced coaches, if you will, about their journeys and provide examples on mine and help maybe speed up their process a little bit, or just provide a window of perspective that they wouldn't have otherwise thought of. And that brings me personal satisfaction and value.
Right. Yeah. The whole thing about the whole coaching staff and having a good, like you said, connection and just when the athletes can feel that, I think you get more out of your athletes whenever. It doesn't matter if you're the head coach or you're just a volunteer coach who's putting in just as much time. It doesn't matter the title. You have a very good room of coaches. I think the athletes feel that as was as I don't know why I couldn't speak the aforementioned. There we go. Jeez, I don't know what's going on. I think it's just big though. And last year my last high school room, all of us coaches, we were really, really close. Some of us wrestled for the coach that was, some of the older coaches, and the kids felt that. And so, like, even here, I think that's a big deal. And, all of us get along really well. And, not only is it nice for the coaches because you can enjoy being around your colleagues on the level of that, right? But also, when it comes to conversations, when it comes to questions, when it comes to athletes coming to talk to you or whomever it might be, like there's almost a comfort level there, right? And obviously in the college space, whether they're from, and I know in soccer, and we haven't got to it yet, but like in particular in like wrestling where we are, like we'll get some people from across the country, but wrestling is a really regional thing, right? And I know soccer can be international more than any other sport in the country, just because maybe basketball is up there, but soccer in particular, just because of the sheer amount of numbers, right? It's the biggest sport in the world. So like it's very nice to have that for an athlete, because I think it does help with the comfort level. And when you have a tough conversation, just in general, having that, it almost feels like a family, right? Having mentors or coaches who are family themselves, you come in here, that it can feel it. It makes it a lot better experience for
I agree.
everybody.
Yeah, it matters. I mean, like trust, transparency, honesty, even when it hurts, those are important things. And when you have those things and it's a two-way street, you're more likely to share things with each other that even if they're uncomfortable, they're helping you, and they're going to help the people that you serve, the students that you work with. And to your point, they see that and they know that, and they know that if they go to one of my assistants and they know that that's if it needs to come to me, it will. If it doesn't need to me, it won't. I don't need to know everything. Like, and our coaches do a great job of, editing or funneling things to me. So I have no idea a lot of times what they're talking about, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
Because if the athlete wanted me to know, he would come to me. But sometimes he wants me to know, and he maybe is going to go this route to get there. And that's okay. And hopefully in the course of time that person feels more comfortable as they get a little bit more mature and older to come directly to me. And that's typically what you see. So if you think about like traffic in my office, first year students, it's pretty low unless there's a real ambitious one or two in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the year two, it's like, I'm not really sure where I stand, or I'm getting it on board, and then after that, it really flourishes, and suddenly they're in your office all the time. And you're like, there's a reason why every name on the wall, all the All-Americans and the All-Region guys, they're the players who have spent most time in my office. And it's not like favoritism. It's just that they were, committed to growing and learning and finding new ways to improve.
They bought in. Yeah. They bought into you and what you're building there. So absolutely like that. So like you've mentioned earlier, like the kid that, the D1 kid who, took a little while to develop, whether that's maturity level, whether it's athletically, whatever it was, to get to where he was, which ended up being, conference player of the year. Right. But when it comes to like athlete development, I think this is important because we've mentioned a few times like even just that some kids come in as a freshman, mentally they're in a certain space, but by the time they leave, right, mentally they're in a different space, and hopefully that's not only a better thing, but also that shows on the field or pitch as well. So like, how do you develop a kid, that comes in as a freshman? And I don't know if you guys have a JV team. Like I know some colleges out there have JVs and stuff, but like in general. Since we're just going to talk true just one team here, how do you develop a kid that you brought in who's a freshman or sophomore, or even if you look at it like sophomore year, he's really close to getting a lot of starting time, playing time, whatever, and he's just not there yet. Developing somebody from, point A to point B, being a starter, making a lot of minutes. Like, how do you develop kids in that aspect, whether that's a physical thing or a mental thing? How do you get them to that, obviously to their thing, which is they want to play? So how do you get a kid there?
Well, I think the first question is, you just alluded to it, like, do they want to play? How badly do you want to play? Back to the group collaboration. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to do?
Right.
If this is what you want, I can certainly put the things in place for you to achieve it. But at the end of the day, I can't do it for you. You have to do it. And it requires a significant amount of discipline and consistency and struggle to do it. So that picture looks different for every single person, because I just need to get to know these young men as people first and understand like what ticks, what makes them go, what's their, what's important to them, what do they value, why are they here, why do they play, what is the reason. And when you understand that more, then you're able to just a little poke here and there, to inspire when they need it. I don't think it's rocket science, like setting up athletic development with strength coaches and fitness folks, or nutrition, or sleep. or all the, the habits that you need on a day-to-day basis. Priority management, I call it, not time management, because there's always 24 hours in a day. It's what you do that changes, not the minute on the clock. Everybody has.
By the way, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's, yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, priority management. Anyways, continue, but that's very good. Okay.
Everyone has access to these things, and everyone at our level at least understands it. So it's not like I'm gonna on peel an onion layer here that's gonna, oh my gosh, awaken folks.
Yeah.
It's just getting to the heart of the human, and the relationships are the core of everything that we do. And if a kid trusts you and knows that you have his best interest in mind, and that you give a shit about him for real, not just in a transactional way where, like, I'm going to win games if you do this. I don't care about that. Like, we're going to win games because of these other things that we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe a young coach evolution too. If we go back to that earlier question, like the transition from transactional to transformational coach, where, we want to win and look, it's my record, I'm the whatever, to now, like, it doesn't matter. But that takes time too. I mean, I'm 47 with 4 kids of my own. I've been doing it for 30 some years, and I don't care if we win or lose. I aspire to win. I try to win.
Of course,
but I only want to do what the players I work with want to do. And I'm just trying to facilitate a space for them to achieve the successes that meet their ambitions. So it's different for everybody. I know that's answer, but
no, you're good. But it's interesting though, because like in today's space with the whole transfer portal and all this stuff, and I know it's debatably the hottest topic, and I talk about, especially I've talked about that to like to a few NAI coaches and stuff. They don't have a portal, but how they sometimes will get kids, whatever. But NCAA, I some reason end up talking about it. But I was listening to another podcast a few days ago, or maybe it was an interview about it was a Division I coach at Arizona State, and the football coach, Coach Dillingham. And, his focus is all about development. Like, he doesn't hit the transfer portal very hard because he believes that, and I'm not going to speak for him, of course, but, like, the idea is that, like, his motto isn't going to buy players out of the portal. He wants to develop players who want to be there, because that culture is going to be intact way more than if you're going out and just grabbing players, right? And so, like, you mentioning that, like, the transactional versus transformational, like, I've learned to appreciate that just as, like, watching how this stuff has evolved, because, like, one of my big questions I'll ask a D1 coach or NCAA coach, previously on this, either on the show or just as a conversation if I'm talking to him on the street, when we talk about it, is like, how do you build that culture with it? And, I think that you mentioning that is a great thing, because I do think you get more out of, I think that there's just a higher maybe satisfaction, or maybe appreciation, or maybe maybe more of a personal, like, individual growth, when kids leave there, whenever they stuck through the hards, the highs, the lows, all those things, and really built the relationships that you won't get by transferring every 2 years or every year, because you're chasing money, you're chasing this, you're chasing that. And so and it's hard to develop, right? Like, it's really hard to develop as a kid if you don't stick around and, like, truly learn this or that, or whatever the case is, in a program. And so you actually mentioning that, I think, is a beautiful thing, because there are some coaches, and you've seen it, at the highest level, obviously Division I football, that guys are getting 60, 70 transfers, spending all this money, and they don't win. And then there's some teams, like, obviously he said this, but Arizona State, they don't have very many transfers, and they were voted to take last in the Big 12, and they ended up winning it last year in football. And so it's like, I know it's a to each their own type of thing, but the whole transaction versus developmental is a in my opinion a huge thing for sure.
I mean, you have to have talent, right, at the base of what you're looking for in player selection. But if you don't have a relationship and a space where it's a win-win space, right? Like, they've got some quality, they're competitive, they want to be in the space, like you mentioned. I want to be here. I want players that want to play at our institution and want to play for me. If you're thinking about other places and you're kind of, I'm not really sure. Well, I'm certain now. It's nice to meet you.
Right.
All the best to you. It's okay. I'm not hurt by that in any way, shape, or form. We're not the right place for every student athlete, and I'm certainly not the right person for everybody. That's okay. And the whole point of the recruiting process or that learning process is to figure out where we can get win-win relationships so that we both achieve what we're looking to achieve and we can do it
Right.
together. And for us, we're very clear on the type of soccer we play and the type of experience that our players have. That is very, I think, it's in our community, it's known. Everybody knows, like, okay, this is a
Oh,
Holker
we
team,
do.
this is a Augsburg team. We know exactly what we're getting here.
Right.
It's pretty clear. And I think that clarity is really helpful. And I'm not going to waver from what we want to be and what we want to do. I rebuilt kind of our soccer piece starting in 2004. So 2005 was a new incoming class, and or sorry, 15, 14 and 15. And 2015 was the first iteration of this. And here we are now heading into 2025. We've gotten better every single year, right? But we haven't hit the apex of that space yet. I think we're on the cusp of it, and I hope we can do it because we want to do it in a way that we appreciate and love doing and
Yeah.
how we play. We enjoy our time together. We enjoy the way that we play. We're going to be, resourceful, but we also want to express ourselves at the same time and not
Yeah.
just when I came to Augsburg, it was in shambles, and we played, a real low block, just put 12, 11 players in front of the box and hang on for dear life and play for a set piece or a contact. And the recipe in college soccer is to be rigid in your defensive structure, get a couple big guys, and get some free kicks. That's legitimately the methodology. So if you recruit everyone who's 6'3" and taller, you're probably going to be fine in college soccer. Just get a bunch of athletes, bang it, run, create problems, disrupt the flow and rhythm of the game, and you're going to have success. I know that, but I don't like it. So we're not going to do it. We're going to do what we
Right.
love to do. And all the players know that, and that's why they're here. And so, we do have several transfers in our program, especially in the last two windows, the last two semester windows, last
Mhm.
fall and January. And actually now this will be three because this upcoming window will have a few more. Zero from the transfer portal. I don't go into the transfer portal. I don't want that because most of those folks are taking their ball and going somewhere else because they didn't get what they wanted. I'm not interested in that. If you're a transfer, that's probably because you've heard about the experience or somebody who's having the experience and they're
Yeah.
sharing that with you and you want to be a part of that. And then it's a robust, still it's a robust learning process about that person to make sure he is the right fit.
Right.
And that's why we have transfers, because at the end of the day, we're still competitive, right? And this is a capitalist society. Like, we've got to get the best and we have to win,
Of course.
and you need better players. And in the years that we've not won, I think we still played better, in my opinion, more attractive, more the way we wanted to do it. But we just didn't have the players maybe that the other teams. They have better players. That's okay. And they're going to win. So, the goal is how can we balance those things? The joy,
Yeah.
the love, the how we want to express ourselves and have good players and have a healthy social culture.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, man. Really hard to do.
Yeah. Well, like, you're talking about how you guys play a little bit of a different style soccer than what you might see, in the big dance every year or whatever the case is. So, like, are you guys, if you don't know this, I'm actually a pretty big soccer fan. Like, I love soccer. I grew up playing it for a long time. I started off an episode with, I started off, I think our last soccer coach really hot by asking him if he's like who his favorite club team was, and I was the opposite club team. Like I'm not afraid to get hot talking soccer for sure. But like when it comes to the schematic side of things, like I know you said that you might not be chasing the big 6'3" guys and whoever might be in either the your defensive side or offensive side, whatever. But like thinking of schematics, are you guys like what makes you guys different? Are you guys running a different formation? Most clubs might be running a 4-4-2 or 4-3-2-1, whatever they're doing, and you guys might be running a 3-5-2. Like, are you guys running different schemes? Are you guys more of a high pace versus more of a counter attack team? I mean, like, what makes you guys different than maybe somebody else in your whether it's division or maybe on the national scale that makes you guys stand out, or maybe just stuff that you guys like to do? I mean, what about your style is
Yeah,
fun?
I'll take that for a spin because I don't think that like, game models or structures are really that detriment, like that's not the impact. You
Okay.
get started in however first 11 the shape looks like, and okay, we know that there are strengths and weaknesses in every system and structure, and here are the places to exploit them, and how the players react is what matters. I think for us, it's about having problem solvers, players
Mm.
with a really high soccer IQ who love the game and can figure things out on their own and solve problems. So I'm not a micromanaging. I'm not, playing Atari here and moving these guys around. That's there's a reference for him, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Age myself. It is not, I don't want to tell you what to do. I want you to
Yeah.
be able to solve the problem on your own and then reflect on the decision you made so that you can change it and grow and get better the next time. We all go always
Mm.
back to White and Kobe Bryant's reference. And in order to do so, we have to have the ball more than our opponents. Because the more we have the ball, then the more times we touch it,
Yeah.
the more chances and opportunities we have to learn and grow and get better. That's just what I believe in. I am not a like, oh God, Pep Guardiola ticky tacky. I'm not
Mm.
at all.
Okay.
I'm more balanced in the way that I see things, but I do want problem solvers and critical thinkers because I think what we're doing through sport is preparing these young men for lives out in the world. And if
Mm.
they can solve problems under different stresses, pressure, circumstance, time, location, opponent, all these conditions, if you can do it in sport, it's easily transferable to real life. That
Right.
for me is the most important thing. So I think we've averaged between 60 and 61% possession over the last 5 years. We're usually about, between 3.5 to 5 hours on the ball more than our opponents over the course of a season. Does that mean we're better? No, I tell this to everybody because some teams might have 2 9s and they play big balls direct, get the second knockdown, play it wide, serve it, score goals, and they win. And the rules say score more goals than the other team.
You
They
win.
don't say
Yeah.
complete a bunch of passes first. It doesn't say that. It doesn't
Right.
have to be this way. It's just the way that we choose because I believe it helps prepare them for life.
Yeah.
And I also think it's a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Uh, and sort of the guys that play here. So
Yeah, well, playing that, right? Like you say, as a athlete or maybe somebody who enjoys the game of soccer, like yeah, a lot of possession, right? Like and I've referenced this before and that, obviously just like playing the game of FIFA. I want to have as much possession to kind of set up my offense, whatever I'm doing, right? I'll go back and forth. I say this playing it, but watching it, you'll see all the best teams in the world doing that, right? They'll set things up. You'll have some teams that are really good at counters, and they kind of want to see what you're doing offensively before they counter or whatever. But the idea is like a lot of that possession. But I'm kind of getting to a point. The reason I'm mentioning this is because for the outside viewer, right, you just watch a team pass the ball back and forth between your back six or your back five or whatever you have back there, and like you're passing it back and forth, right, running whatever the case is, like it can be boring to watch, right? And don't get me wrong, it can be boring even if you're a fan sometimes. But at the same time, there's a reason for it 99% of the time, and probably 100% really of what you're actually doing, whether it's setting up your offensive scheme, whether it's seeing how they're moving their I guess that'd be at that point their defense, but their front line, whatever the case is, right? Like but as a person outside, you don't see that. You just see guys passing the ball back and forth, and it's like, well, I want to see offense. I want to see people, getting to the box and getting penalty kicks because they're aggressive, or they're doing, huge through balls. They're doing huge lobs down the field, whatever the case is. And so, like, you don't. I think the appreciation of the game. You have to appreciate what you're doing back there. So, like high possession, like you said, you might not win, but it gives you more opportunities. So like for the outside people who don't really watch the game, which I guess I can't say yes or no because I don't know who actually watches soccer, but for the people who aren't accustomed to the game of soccer, who just kind of turn it on, especially with the World Cup coming up, next year, being here in the North America, I should say, maybe not United States, but in North America, like what is something to keep an eye out for? Maybe like just for the average fan, like when you're doing that possession, obviously there's something behind it, right? So like it's boring for some people, but I don't even know how I want to answer or ask this question because I think it's just more of a rant thing. But obviously you can agree you're doing it for a reason, right? It's not just to waste time.
when you bring up a good point too, because like the comment I made about percent possession and time of possession, that can be skewed. If we were to sit in the back third and do that the whole time, then great, we have possession, we have these numbers, and that might look better to somebody, but it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't serve any purpose. Just to provide some clarity in how we play, like we're really brave, sometimes foolishly brave, where we'll just leave one, maybe two in the back. That's it. Like our fullbacks are both end line, both sides. Eights are we just go, we're all out. Let's go after you and have some fun.
Yeah.
And if you strip us and play behind on a counter, that's why we have goalkeepers who can stay connected and play out of the back really well, because we need that. But we have balance too. We can hit you in transition. So if suddenly there's a rhythm of the game, we know that there's ebbs and flows. There's going to be moments where we don't even want the ball. We say, look, you can have it because we're going to take a little breather here. And then we're going to get ourselves in a position to expose you when you get disoriented out of your shape. And then we're going to get into you once we strip and steal. But there's certain cues and things we're going to read and look for. But that's where you want critical thinkers and problem solvers to say, okay, now's the time. Here we go. And everyone's on the same page doing that together. That's the special thing about team sport, I think, is getting the group to do that on its own. To your point about the game being boring, it's like watching baseball for me, right? Like my dad was a really significant Division I baseball player at University of Minnesota, and he had offers from the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it was like, I can't watch baseball to save my life, but my dad is so everything that happens, all the nuance, whatever, he's like, this is amazing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's just an appreciation. I appreciate and respect baseball like I do football, like I do wrestling, like I do every other sport, because everything else has its own space. And I mean, you guys are insane, the amount of work that you do, running and hauling weights and humans and whatever else it is every day and not eating. And I'd be a grumpy, ornery man if I was doing that. So, it's okay if people don't understand it. It's okay. It's not for everybody.
It's true.
But I think people in this country, as we diversify as a United States, it's becoming more and more mainstream. And the younger millennial generation, and now whatever the heck's next, Gen Alpha, like it's getting. These are soccer people who grow up playing soccer and watching soccer now. So I think we're going to have we're still. When I was a little kid, I'm like, gosh, man, we're maybe one or two generations away, and now I have 4 children, and I'm like, we're still 1 or 2 generations away. I think NFL is probably untouchable in our culture. But I don't think anything else is. I think that everything else is vulnerable to being overtaken by soccer in regard to like popularity and viewership and attendance and money and all the rest of it.
I just think it's hard, to think about the idea of, and I've said this, and it actually got brought up to me, and it made me really think about where we sit in the game of soccer. But I think it's really hard because like you've mentioned, football and some of these other sports like basketball or whatever, right? Like, your best athletes in America are playing those sports, right? Athletically speaking wise, right? The tallest, the fastest, whatever, they're doing those sports. So like the game of soccer, it's really hard because I would love to see America win a World Cup. I'd love to see us be, as dominant as, as Brazil is, or Spain, or whomever, Paris or France, right? Things like that. But that's because they're getting their best athletes in the country, right? And there's obviously good athletes playing basketball, whatever they're doing, but like top to bottom, their best athletes probably on a ratio of 8-1 or whatever is probably playing soccer growing up. And we don't have that here, at least in my opinion, right? We just don't. So like you said, we're a few generations away, but we are much closer. But it's just hard because like you don't have your best athletes playing soccer versus other countries you do.
Geography matters. Proximity matters.
Right.
Climate matters. There are so many elements in this country that are working against us. But as we continue to grow and, culture shift in your home, like my home, the reason my children are good and play is because they grew up in a home where there were soccer balls everywhere, games on TV. That's what they did and watched. They were at college games, in the locker room, around it all of the time. That's why you see so many like Hispanic culture in our country is just absolutely crazy for football. Like you go to a game and, USA Guatemala last week in St. Louis, it's all Guatemala fans. USA Mexico and Houston on Sunday night, it's all Mexican fans. It's like 10-15% American fans, maybe. And we're still a ways away. But I think those folks, the idea here is as assimilation takes place over time, and this takes a long time to do, especially if we have some conflict like we have right now in the political landscape. But like to get folks to assimilate and become like more proud of like, okay, United States of America, like that's it. So like Diego Luna is a great example of that, right? Grows up in the Mexican family in Southern California. He's cheering for the U.S. His family's cheering for Mexico.
Yeah,
He's
and he
cheering for
chose
the U.S. now.
USA.
Like,
Yeah,
and I think like now when he has kids, who do you think his kids are going to cheer for, right? So I think it just takes time,
it does
and
for sure.
and we're getting a lot closer. But again, those other factors they're overwhelming. France, Argentina, Brazil, everywhere else, every home is right on top of each other. And those players or people are all together all the time watching matches on the weekend. They go to work all week so that they can go to the game on the weekend.
Right.
In some ways it's NFL culture here too, for the 16 weeks, 8 or 9 games you get in the fall season. People do the same thing. They spend thousands of dollars to go to a football game once a week.
Yeah.
It's
just what it is. Yeah. It's just how it works, and so
I would love to see it, man. Like I love, I mean, and I'm not saying taking anything away from all the other sports, of course, right? Like I love all the other sports, and I've learned to appreciate every sport in this that we have. Like even if I don't play it, don't do it, don't watch it, follow it like that. I appreciate all sports. Obviously being, growing up playing soccer is one of my favorite sports to watch. Just as a whole. So I'd love to see America, and obviously being on our home soil next year, I would love to see us make it into past group stages and make it deep. I was hoping realistically, to be honest with you, which I probably spoke way too high. If somebody put the over under, I'd probably be losing, but I put us making it to the Final Four just because of how it looked, and I was like, man, 4 more years, we're starting to see the right people, things like that. Whatever. I put us in the Final Four. I don't know if we'll actually make it there, but I was high. Let's just say they said over under 6, and I was like, no, we're good in the Final Four. So I was way high on it. So, but it's the idea of like, even if I don't watch soccer to the extent of some people, like I'm high on America. So like it's in our home home stadiums. It's on our turf. We don't know when the next time it'll come here. Like, let's just say screw it, and let's hope. Obviously, I hope we could do it. I know we won't win it, but it'd be cool to make it there. And when you're there, you never know. But if you're there, you never know. Make it to the game.
Yeah, get out of the group stage, and even who cares about your draw, and then just day by day, just do the work, and day by day, and you're gonna need a bounce. You're gonna need a moment. You're gonna need critical something. So is it possible? Yeah. If I was a betting man, I would not take your bet.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's like plus 6,000. But hey, if I get that, I'm about to make some money. Well, I appreciate everything, man. I do. I mean, I could talk a little bit more about recruiting, which I have like 2 more questions I think about that, and then I want to ask you the deep questions, and then we can kind of. I have some fun questions at the very end that I always like to ask, and I'm excited to hear your part of it. But my final real 1 or 2 questions about the recruiting side of things is like, because you're at soccer, and we've mentioned how it's such an international sport. Like, if I were to look at your roster, which to be honest with you, I didn't have a chance to look at prior to us getting together, but like, are you recruiting internationally? And if you are, like, how are you getting kids, and kind of just maybe in general, whether international or, in the States, how are you getting these kids, and what are you looking for when you're recruiting them?
The answer is no, I don't recruit internationally. I'm kind of a stubborn old man, I think, who believes the American, collegiate system and model was set up for a different purpose.
Yeah.
And so I lean into celebrating local players and domestic players more than anything. We did have a German international on the team, and Jakob Morlock last year, but he was with us for 3 seasons, and he transferred from another school. So he came to the U.S. to go to St. Cloud State Division II institution, and then he transferred to Augsburg. He wasn't having the experience that he was hoping for. Other than that, I mean, we have we have a lot of first generation students, but not like international students who come over just to play or
okay.
part of the program. And so our roster will look diverse in name for sure, and maybe country of origin, but those are not direct national they're U.S. citizens or residents or whatever it might be, the process, and they just choose to attend our institution. So that's kind of how I've done it, at least I know some of my colleagues who maybe don't have access to the local players, the domestic players like we do, then they're going to be focused on internationals because that's what they need to do to have a chance competitively. So I get that. I respect that. I have no problem with it. It's just not what I want to do. I'm not going to say no to a superstar who wants to come over and play, though. You know what I mean? Like, and
If they fall in my lap, I'm going to take it.
yeah, sure. And there's value in the locker room space. I think that is about a diverse experience that's different and unique to the American experience. So having that in the locker room is really beneficial to everybody as they grow as people, to just be more aware, more cosmopolitan, if you will. In regard to recruiting, actually I'd look now. Diego Vite would be one more too. He's a Chilean guy, but he came in to go to I think it was Barton County maybe, and then he transferred to Texas A&M Division I, and then he came to Augsburg. So it's kind of a roundabout way. That one's a weird story. His girlfriend at the time was running at the University of Minnesota, so they came up together from Texas A&M. Just luck of the draw, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We're not out actively seeking these folks out. So
yeah,
most of the students we get, had been historically Minnesota kids, and that's just not the case anymore. I think of our incoming group now, we have one traditional first-year student from Minnesota, and we just got him across the line in the last week. So everything else is, I think we have New Jersey, Ohio. As a U.S. U17 national team goalkeeper, or Leas Caps with the 17s, played for Columbus Crew for a bit. He's coming in to fill our goalkeeping role because our goalkeeper last year was an outstanding goalkeeper. He transferred to University of Illinois Chicago in January after his first semester, and he's playing down there, and his brother's there. So it's like it makes perfect sense for him to go there, and his family. He's from the area. Great experience. We're cheering for the guy every single day, and we just needed to replace him, and we were fortunate enough to get one through a former player and assistant coach who is now.
I was gonna say that was that connection you had with the
player.
So,
that makes sense.
Like when it says recruit, I mean, I'm not out trolling like I used to. Like you get in the boat and you just hold the fishing line and you hope you get something. That's kind of how it all started. I don't do that anymore. Like they come to me and people that I trust send me players or information, say this is a player who I think would be good for you, and they know because they know me and they know our program. And so it really kind of shrinks the pool of players that we're looking at, which I think is great. And then you get to know the character and see some of the little nuances and how that might fit in what we do. But again, circling back to how we play, soccer IQ is the most important thing for me.
That's fair. Yeah. So
when you think about, I mentioned, or I asked you about the challenges earlier, right? Like I asked you about challenges about just coaching and some of the things you've had to overcome. But maybe what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in your time frame in the recruiting space that you feel like you've had to overcome, and you probably are always going to have challenges recruiting. I mean, I don't know, and this, I mean, maybe not. I mean, maybe I'm naive to it, but like, I feel like no matter how big of a program you are, right? Like it might be challenging because you have 6,000 kids trying to go there, like UNC, Duke, right? Your name brand, or I guess Vermont now, right? They may have a whole list of people that want to go there, so like that might be challenging to kind of weed out versus like a small junior college that is a first year program might be hard to find people. So like no matter where you are in the space, I feel like there's going to be some sort of difficulty there. So like what are some challenges that you feel like you may have faced in time that you've overcame and that you feel like you've just figured out and now it's a little bit smoother, or maybe some challenges you feel like you're going to have to face?
Yeah, I think the consistent challenge is finance. And that's not changing as higher education continues to inflate. And then society has a little different perspective on the value of that experience today. So you run into it. But if you want to play high level soccer in our country, if you're not in an MLS academy directly in the MLS, not MLS Next, MLS Academy. There's a very distinct difference there. If you're not in that space, then, the collegiate model is the way to go, unless you do like an overseas thing and then you spend a bunch of money. You're doing some Barcelona Academy, which is really just a cash grab. So I think that, financial aid and expenses cost is the consistent challenge, and it's never going to go away. But I just think the reality is, look, if it's going to work, it's going to work. And if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And I understand that because like I run a household. I have 4 children who are going to be going to school, hopefully at some point in their lives. Like I get it. And it's okay. And it's okay that it didn't work out because of financial reasons. I think the thing for me and my staff is this: when a player leaves and his family leaves my office, the reason they're not going to choose our institution will never have anything to do with our soccer program.
Mm-hmm.
That is our key.
Never. Yeah.
We do our work, and if the institution aligns with us and the cost aligns, then we're going to have a win-win relationship. If something doesn't align, it's not a win-win, and we shake hands. We wish them the very best, and we help them however we can.
Yep.
It's the financial part, which is a big deal, which I think is interesting because obviously D3 NAI, and I think well, I'll be honest with you, it's costly no matter where you look. I think, you know, and some places you're allowed to give athletic scholarships and some you're not, right? And so being a Division 3, I believe, is what you guys are, right? That's a whole nother conversation, and I know there's ways to go around it with academics, or maybe there's some other things that you might be able to help out financially with, but I know that's a big thing. I'm sure that overcoming is difficult just because you can't give athletic scholarships.
Yeah, and I don't even think that's that different, honestly, for Division 1 institutions. Like, you know, our neighbors across the street, across the river, University of St. Thomas is a Division 1 men's soccer program. Their annual tuition, I just got the numbers sent to me earlier, it was $75,000 a year.
Wow.
Tuition, room and board, and they only have like a limited amount of money to allocate 25 roster players on their team, and they can't stack. So if you get academic merit money, they can't add athletic money on top of it to minimize it and make it more effective because they don't have the resources yet in place. Hopefully they do it someday because they're going to need to if they want to be relevant. And that's just what we're in, is an arms race in athletics across the board in all places and spaces. And it's no different even at Division 1 level. So even it's like, wow, it's a Division 1 program and they have money. Yeah, they do. But 25 guys on the
to go there?
6 point, whatever, how many scholarships this institution's funded. Maybe they had 9.9 before that all got dropped. I don't know who's going to be fully funded. Only Power Fives, only the insane football programs are going to have the fully funded. So they can buy an entire roster of 28 at the new cap, but nobody else can. So how are you going to do it? It's just, it's universal across all levels of soccer. And I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
That's a fair piece. Now you know, I know you talked about the AAU, and we can just touch on this really, really quick. But I know you've mentioned like early on, you talked about like club and AAU and things like that, and the pay to play idea, and you just mentioned like the cash grab stuff, right? And I think it's a huge topic in today's world. No matter where you look, what sport, like there's going to be cash grab camps, there's be cash grab, you know, opportunities for you to come join this team when really it's just a coach wanting to get paid for his time, whatever. I don't know what they are. I'm not going to speak on any names because I don't necessarily know. But I do know there are those things out there for athletes, right? There's so many recruiting services too, by the way. I was looking, I'm on Twitter, right? Like, and I was just kind of looking through, and I follow a bunch of different sport coaches, and football comes about a lot, right? Of course, because football. And long story short, like, I see these people post some really, really good information or whatever, and I'm like, I'll go look at them, who they are. And it's like, follow me or click the link for recruiting stuff, and it's like so many. And so, like, anyways, this is a whole nother podcast topic, but there's a lot of those. But the idea of like the pay to play stuff, right? So like, do you feel, and this is straight across question, do you feel like you have to be in the club scene, whatever it might be, whether it's high level or just club, whatever the case is, but do you feel like you have to be in a club of some sort in order for you to get seen by a college, or maybe to go to the next level? And maybe I say need as in like you have to be in it, but do you think it helps being in a club? Because not everybody has the financials to do that, you know, and even like some of these cash grab stuff, like not everybody, they do it, but then they realize it doesn't get them anywhere. But like, so do you feel like it's necessary for kids to be in a club or something like that in order for them to get the chance? And how do you feel about the whole space of all this stuff? Because you said club youth coaching needs change in general from maybe just United States in general, but where do you kind of sit on all that?
I'm trying not to throw up right now. You know, it's a $30+ billion industry, youth sports, and I'm a part of it. I'm in the same cycle, right? So I coach in a youth organization. I did for the last 2 years for one space, and now I'm moving to a new space. And that's just the phase and the development where my son is at currently. And the gross answer to your question is yes. It is important, and it stinks, and it shouldn't be that way. but we don't have an infrastructure set up, particularly in soccer, to be able to identify players. So if you go to like the Saturday Hispanic leagues or the West African leagues in Brooklyn Park here, or the Hmong leagues on the east side of St. Paul, or the Somali kick around up at Cedar Riverside, like you can go find these places. There's so many good players, but they're not in the traditional space for a lot of the reasons that we talk about. But the reality is the rich get richer. And the big clubs with the big money who are spending, and then they market and brand shitty products like they're amazing, is the biggest problem we have in the youth sports space.
Yeah.
And it's not, full disclosure, it's not honest. It's telling people what they want to hear, not telling people the truth. And so just like not holding the players accountable, because you're fear of losing them. And I talk about with my experiences, it's the same thing in the youth sports world, right? It's a scarcity mindset where we want to keep and hold on to everybody because it makes our brand bigger, stronger. We make more money. It may not be the right thing for those kids. It may not be the right thing for the family, but we don't really care because we care about us and our business model and self-preservation and survival.
Right.
And it's terrible. And that's how I wish there was a safe place to go to. And the reality is it's probably your community soccer clubs, at least in my sport. But those are very rare and they have limitations of what they can offer, right? So from a young age, they're really great, but then you hit a recruitable space or shortly there before, maybe the diversity and talent grows and the ambition grows, then you have to move on. And those community clubs have to help and serve those children to move them on to the next phase, which is the really pay to play model. Then you get to the pay to play model and everybody hoards everything. And it's like, it's not the right thing for the children. So it's really hard and gross. And I'm in the middle of it right now. I can tell you that. And I don't like it one bit. And it's because we're not doing the right thing for people. We're doing the right thing for, self-preservation or scarcity mindset and money. And it's just.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a coach a few episodes ago, and I asked her, I was like, what's more important, a high school athlete that you find playing high school sports that's really good versus a club? Like, I can't remember the exact question, but it was like high school versus club. If you're looking for athletes here or there, like which one are you looking more for or whatever? Like, where do you think you're going to find more athletes? And she brought up a really good point. It's like, well, you can go be on the best play team, right? IMG or whatever I don't know all the big soccer clubs, so I don't want to reference any. I have no idea, but you could be like good enough to make one of the best teams in the country, like clubs, off season, whatever rec stuff, or club stuff that you travel against the nation, kind of like off season baseball, right? Travel baseball, but you may not even get to see the field, even though you say you made the team. And so like I might be going to watch these kids, or this tournament or whatever. But I don't get to see these kids particularly because they don't even get to see the field because they're on the best team or whatever, right? So I guess there's like that back and forth or whatever, or what's the best term? Like there is that opportunity or that chance that like you might be on a team, but if you don't play a lot, like no matter what you do, a coach may not see you, right? And so like there's also that side too that people, I feel like athletes or parents need to understand too.
That's a problem with the development process for coaches as well, because many are, again, coaching for results, not to develop players. Like instead of playing the 16th or 17th player on the roster in these difficult circumstances at the end of a game when it's stressful, they're going to bury him in the bench because they have to win the game. Why do they have to win the game? Because the club director or the executive director is telling them they have to win because it's going to boost the profile of the organization, which is going to attract more players, more money, and then we'll get them better coaches, more money, blah, blah, blah. The reality is you need to play those children so that they can experience those stresses in those moments so that they can grow and have the tools to be able to reference later when they need them. And the trick is we don't know when is it appropriate to do this, right? So like I was coaching a U16 team this last year and our kids played about the same amount of time, 17 players on the roster. I also had to lobby like hell to only take 17. Because most of these organizations want 18 players, including the one I'm headed to next, wants 18 players. So is that the right thing? You make 18 people feel like they've made the best team, the top group, but you limit opportunity to touch the ball, make those choices, solve problems, all the things that I alluded to earlier. So the training environment becomes so much more specific than the match environment. Like what we do in training, we have to be mindful of how many players and how many contacts and what's going to happen so that we can help them have those experiences so that they're all all relatively, in the same plane.
Ready.
But
Yeah.
you're always going to have a couple players that are they're just better, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But anyway, this could be an entire whole
Yeah, whole nother podcast episode too. You're
gross. It's
absolutely right.
ugly. I don't like it, and I'm in it,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
own that I'm in it, and I work in it, and I own that, and I'm not happy about that.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you talking about that and being honest about it. But like you said, it is a whole nother episode, whole nother podcast episode, and maybe I will do like a little, like a little off the, what do you call it? Maybe like on the couch or something, like a little break off version of these true podcasts, just so that way we can talk about maybe some of those things deeper. So if you ever come back on, I usually not that. I'll actually tell you if that would be the case, because the second time, if we ever come back on, we talk a lot more about like behind the scenes soccer, like what you're doing. Like maybe the coaches that are listening to this, like they may appreciate hearing about this stuff here. But the second episode, we definitely talk more like maybe some stuff you do in practice, maybe some more stuff you do in recruiting, like maybe a little bit more depth stuff. So coaches who may have questions, those type of things, right? But I'll definitely let you know if we did a breakoff version and be like, hey, be prepared to talk about this because this is what we're doing. So definitely do that. But to kind of finish off, the last few questions here, it's kind of the deeper questions, right? And some of my favorite questions. And so, I'll lead it off by saying this is, the word culture is probably the biggest term in all sports when it comes to building a program, but you've been in it for 20 years and, obviously you've gotten better and better each year, like you've mentioned, and finding success along the way, of course, right? Along the way. So how do you build a successful, culture on the level of buy-in and mindset?
It's the most important thing we do,
Mm.
I believe. I think if you get the culture wrong, nothing's right. It's like, taking off to the moon. You miss that by an inch, you're in big trouble. You can miss the landing by a little bit in your culture, but you can't miss the start. And for me, it is activities or exercises like I talked about at the front end of this conversation, getting the group together to collaborate over what is it that, we want to achieve. What do you want to achieve? What are the things you're willing to do to achieve it? What are the things that get in the way? How are we going to hold each other accountable? Okay. What are the accountability partners, so that when we train away from the season, because we know that in season, everyone's working, right? It's out of that specific time frame that the differences occur. It's the non-training windows, who's doing more work and who isn't. That's who's going to grow the most. So how do you have accountability partners and how do you create a space where the players really do care about each other, like sincerely care about each other and want to play for each other, because that matters. If I've got an asshole on my team, I'm less inclined to go dig in and win a tackle for him. It's just the reality. But if this is one of my really close friends, I'm going to do anything I can in my life to help him and help our
for sure.
And so building that is really important. We do so much of it and we spend so much time doing it. And, my graduate assistant coach, Nick Sikowski, kind of has a playbook that's been passed down. Tom Mahoma, who works now, he was my grad assistant for a bit. He's at Trinity in Illinois now, and he's works for U.S. Soccer. He's a performance coach for the youth national teams too. So he really kind of started all of this stuff back in like 2016, 17, 18, that range too. And Tom did such a great job, and we've just kind of built up along the way, year over year, the activities that we do daily. Not like once a week, once a month, once a season. Like you start with your preseason stuff, and that's what most people do, and then they just move on to the soccer part of it, or the sport part of it, and whatever sport it might be, and we don't revisit or forget about all those things. Not us. We're very intentional about regular culture touching, just to make sure that we stay in tune.
Yeah.
And I think that that's super valuable. And it's the same thing holds true in the youth space that I work in. Like if you look at the culture of the teams I coach, like those guys love each other. And that's the only thing that matters to me. Like, let's get this, and then the rest of it happens. So how do you build it? You have to be very intentional and you have to be very consistent. And there are plenty of culture activity workbooks, like things silly to do. But if you're a good person and you surround yourself with good people, you're going to have a good culture.
That helps. Yeah, that helps a lot. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, they say, winning helps a lot, but also having the right people around just who you're going to interact with every day, like we mentioned earlier, helps a lot too. So I love that. So now on the same side of that, right, like how do you build, and I guess it kind of plays a factor in the culture too, but, maybe just on the level of like success, right? So like, how do you build a successful program? And this could be in any aspect that you want it to be, whether it's wins and losses or any other variable that goes into it. But how do you build a successful program on the level of wins? And like I said, the win can be anything in your program, but how do you sustain that over time?
I'm a firm believer of the, how you do anything is how you do everything,
Mm-hmm.
line of thinking. And so like, we're going to out fundraise everybody. We're going to do
Mm-hmm.
better in the classroom than everybody. We're going to, have higher graduation rates than everybody. We're going to have employment rates that are higher. We're going to celebrate alumni relationships and interactions more than
Mm-hmm.
anybody else. We're going to connect with families and parents more than anybody else. So it's like us competing in a way, if you will, but like we're competing with ourselves, but we want to be the standard bearers. So we
Mm-hmm.
want to be the program that everyone else looks up to and emulates and says that the men's soccer program, they've got their stuff together. Holker, like the responses for
Yeah.
me, they're instant. Like, how quick it's coming, because that's how on top of it and how organized and how sharp we are across the board in everything that we do. That's our standard for winning. Now, if we take care of all the details in training and we over prepare and all the film is right and the session design is right and the scouts are right and our players are healthy, right, and they're feeling good and confident and cared for and significant and valued, all of these things play a role in winning. And then you need referees help at our level for sure.
Yeah. 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 We got to have a good
And
ref out here. Yeah.
yeah, you need luck, you need the balance, you need some other
Yeah.
crazy things. So
Yeah.
like, I had this youth team that was just down in the national championships in St. Louis, and there's this dog Seaman who Lewis and Clark brought with them as they explored across the St. Louis River, the Missouri River. And there's a huge statue down there, and the urban myth is that if you touch its nose, it's for good luck. Well, for 2 years, our group gets down there and touches the nose of Seaman to get the good luck. And for 2 years, they've won back-to-back national championships. And I think that they would believe that that is a direct reflection or result of touching the nose of Seaman. So luck, silliness, culture, high standards, accountability, all of those things across the board are really what drives a winning program for us.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And I don't know what happened there, by the way. My thing just turned off. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I really like that a lot. And you mentioned the scout side, and I know like soccer, which is crazy because like you think scouts are like in professional stuff, right? Like you kind of think about professional soccer's having scouts and oh, cancel. What the heck's going on here?
Technical difficulty there. But you talk about scouts in just your everyday, right? And I don't know if that's like game scouts or like I don't know, right? But like, how important are the scouts to your everyday process?
I think they're important. We have to balance who we are and what we do, with strengths and weaknesses that our opponents bring. And everyone has a
Mm,
unique, framework. Like we have who we are, and St. Wolf has who they are, and Gustavus has who they are, and St. Mary's has who they're like different. McAllister has I get it. Like everyone, Whitewater, holy cow, everyone plays a little bit differently. So we know that, but we can prepare a team to better deal with the things they're going to see before they see them. That's essentially it, is getting eyeballs on it, experiencing it in the training environment so they know what to expect. So when it comes live and happens, they're like, I got it. I've been there, done that. No problem.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
Well, come down to my final deep question here for you, Coach. It's my favorite question. It's actually the name of the show. But it's why do you do this? What's your coach's why?
To help other people. That's it. My personal sense of who I am and the feel good you want in life that comes
Mm-hmm.
from helping other people. And I
Mm-hmm.
just happen to be, pretty good at this part of it. So it's worked for me, and it's worked for the people I worked with for the most part. And I hope we can keep doing it for as long as I can.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I mean, yeah, the why is always important, right? And you doing this for so long, clearly you have to love it. We all know we don't do it for the paycheck, so you have to just love what you're doing. And so, I always appreciate when the why is something, just helping people out. So I definitely love that. I have a few more questions for you, Coach. This is definitely the fun stuff. So this is where I was telling you earlier how the other, it's debate questions. Let's just say that it's debate questions here.
But if you guys are still listening or watching this,
If you're on YouTube, make sure you guys hit that bell, like, subscribe, all the 9 yards. If you guys are an audio listener, make sure you guys leave a star, leave a review, say what you got to say, but say it with your chest because Coach and I want to hear it. Coach, when it comes to the game of soccer or football, right? Two-parter here. One, who is your favorite player of all time? And two, who is the GOAT of all time?
Thierry Henry. And God, this is brutal. It's not Ronaldo. Don't worry about that. For me, it's Messi or Maradona. And as good as Pele was, it's just a different era. I gotta go Messi, I think.
Messi. Okay. Trust me. And by the way, I don't have Ronaldo as my GOAT either. So, like, I appreciate you not saying that. If there's any soccer coaches in the future listening to this, I'm sorry, but I don't think Ronaldo's a GOAT. But anyways, okay, so Messi up there, okay. And you said Thierry Henry, right? Was your favorite player, right? What about him was your favorite? Why'd you like him so much?
I think just the flair with which he played. He balanced like those critical moments that he could create goals from nothing, working off of Bergkamp or Reyes or whoever it was he was working with. And he was just a competitor too, and he could do it in different places. I mean, for Arsenal for so long, and then for Barcelona, and then France, he was just unbelievable.
Just always good. Yeah.
Okay, so club wise, who's your favorite club team or club? What's your favorite club? Like?
Thierry Henry should have given it away for you. I'm an Arsenal guy.
Yeah.
So you're an Arsenal guy. Okay, so respect. Thank you. So I'm not a huge Premier League guy, to be honest with you, but I am an Arsenal fan if I'm talking that. So it seems I've had almost every other one. I've had Manchester, I've had Liverpool. I haven't had Man City yet, so I'm actually okay with that because Man City I would have a real problem with. I'm not a big Man City fan at all, but I've had some other ones on here, so I have that little debate. But I am glad. Okay, we have virtual handshake there. Cool. Arsenal it is. So now when it comes to international, right? Are we same idea? Are you an England fan or who are you? What's your favorite international club or international team?
International team, France is hard to keep my eyes off of.
Yeah.
Now that's obviously now because that's interesting. I'm actually also a France fan. Mbappe and everything they've done the last really 6 to 8 years, probably actually close to a decade now, has really been like hard. Yeah, been hard not to be a fan of, and so I'm also a France guy when it comes to that. But who was the best international team that you've ever seen play? You don't have to name off the people, but like looking at World Cups, looking at whatever in the last, let's just say since I don't know, 20, 30 years, 40 years, whatever. Who was the best international team that you ever saw play? Might be easier to name a World Cup year, but
in that time frame.
Yeah, I mean, there have been European Cup winners and World Cup winners, and I think it's hard to walk away from Spain.
Spain, okay, interesting.
Okay.
In the era of the magnificent players.
Yeah, they were very good for sure. Okay, so then my final question for you, and this one usually gets this one's very debatable. Well, what state produces the best high school soccer?
High school soccer?
Yes, sir.
Oof. If you said club soccer, I'd have answers for you. High school soccer, man, I don't know. Like, no idea. No idea.
Okay.
It's not good to tell you that.
Hey,
I want to know one, but if you don't have one, I kind of respect it in a sense. I mean, you got recruits you're looking into. You don't want to say the wrong thing. Like, sure, I feel that. There's just so much out there. That's why I have to ask it because it is it's a debate.
I spent a ton of time watching high school soccer across the country. I can tell you that much.
Okay, that's fair.
So I wouldn't know. That would not be an informed choice. I would be just guessing.
Okay. Yeah.
Rhode Island. We'll go with that. Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah, they got like 7 high schools there, and they're best. Okay. Uh, so cool. Well, I appreciate that, man. But Coach, I really appreciate you jumping on here, man. This was a really good episode, very informative, and I appreciate it so much. And love to have you back on again. Don't know when. Maybe after the season. Maybe here in a little while, right? Kind of see how things go and jump you back on. But I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for giving me some of your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I always enjoy these types of these conversations. They're important, and hopefully they're helpful for somebody.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I appreciate you so much for giving all of the stuff that you, not only for myself personally, but everybody listening. And so, if, like I said earlier, guys, thank you so much for listening. I don't want to miss the next one. Make sure you guys leave a review, leave a comment, whatever on this one. But Coach, again, thank you so much for joining. But with that being said, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.